Absolutely, Gia. President Trump is the third U.S. president to face impeachment. And today, Democrats will vote on two articles of impeachment: abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. So here's how today is going to work. The House will hold 6 hours of debate. Then the vote is expected this evening. Republicans may use tactics to delay that vote, but a final decision is expected by the end of the day. President Trump is still calling this impeachment process a hoax. In fact, he sent a letter to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi yesterday telling her to immediately cease this impeachment fantasy. Meanwhile, you've got rallies across the country, including in Minnesota, with people wanting President Trump removed from office. But at this point, it doesn't sound like that's going to happen, because what happens after this vote, if it's approved, is the impeachment trial would happen in the Senate. Who controls the Senate? Republicans. And they say, Gia, that they're pretty much going to clear the president.
Yeah, feels like it's going to be a very long day. Thanks, Ellery.